Urbanization's Impact on Rural Areas by Leah Therian. Urbanizing rural areas will improve education for students and teachers in the area, providing better resources. Group Perspectives. Bridget will be talking about the impact of technology and how it's changing rural areas and suburban America. Dara will be assessing health discrepancies in rural areas. Axel will be addressing urban and rural societies and how they lack certain necessities to maintain sustainable and innovative housing and infrastructure. Connor will be talking about urbanization and how it is changing transportation compared to rural areas. My perspective will be rural territories and how they lack proper educational systems and opportunities. So what's the difference between rural and urban areas? Urban areas have a population of more than 2,500 people, while rural areas have a population of less than 2,500 people. Rural areas rely mostly on agriculture or natural resource-based options like farming. Urban areas are more sustainable with facilities and functions. Urban areas negatively affect the basis of urbanized schooling because of its rapid growth nature and its inability to sustain educational perspective. But how are these areas urbanized? Urbanization is caused by two factors: natural increase in population and migration from rural areas to urban areas. The natural increase in population is when the birth rate exceeds death rate. From rural to urban migration, it is driven by pull factors of urban areas and push factors of rural areas. The problem: children are being left uneducated or put through poor educational systems both globally and locally. These issues include physical distance of students to school, lack of interest in teacher relocation, poor access to technology or internet, and poverty. Though rural education is catching up to urban education, there are still differences. Large and growing gaps in college attendance and postgraduate educational attainment are two factors. The local problem: rural versus urban in America. 26% of 18 to 14-year-olds are enrolled in college as opposed to 47% in urban locations. Only 55% of people living in rural areas have access to internet speeds as opposed to 94% in urbanized locations. 47.2% of students aren't enrolled in AP classes as opposed to 2.6% not enrolled in urbanized locations. Funding in the United States of America for schools is split up in three sections: local, state, and federal. On average, schools in America receive a certain percentage of money from each section. Over the last 10 years, funding in 36 states has dropped. Limited options in rural America include the rural brain drain. Students learning in rural areas are being taught about other labor markets and communities in different locations, causing them to leave. There is no pathway for college graduates to be filtered back into their own rural community. Economic vitality of rural communities like logging and fishing is slowing or declining, and the opportunity for young educated people to return to these areas after graduation has disappeared, contributing to their relocation. The global problem: Latin America. Poor or rural dwellers are generally illiterate. Children are limited to poverty-driven areas because of lack of skills and knowledge. Poorer communities equals children drop out more frequently, and the poverty in Latin America countries limits the growth of educational opportunities for children. There is no preschool education, unprepared teachers, grade repetition, and school dropouts. The global problem in Brazil. 19% of Brazil is rural. The poorest 40% of teenagers average 4 years of schooling, while the 20% of their richer counterparts have twice that average of schooling. There are low connection speeds and high costs of education services. 18% are illiterate, and 38% of undergraduates are illiterate. Children between the ages of 7 to 14 work for their families instead of going to college. Solutions implemented locally. Title I, Part A of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. The problem is that rural areas have less high schools as opposed to urban areas. This act is the largest federal funding stream designed to support educational services for schools with concentrations of low-income students. It has reached 95% of schools nationwide and evolved to ensure an equitable education for disadvantaged students and to bolster economic competitiveness by boosting academic achievement. The Department of Education uses targeted grants, which means that all eligible districts must serve at least 10 low-income children representing at least 5% of all children in the district. Solutions implemented globally. In Mexico, the problem was that there were distance issues and lack of attendance, so Prospera was created. It provides a fixed monetary transfer to families if their children attend at least 85% of school days and receive regular health checkups. In Laos, the problem is that there is lack of food because of poverty, so the National School Meal Program was created in 2013. It provided free school lunches to children in poor or rural provinces and also provides fresh food to schools in general. In Indonesia, the problem was that there were high teacher absenteeism and lack of teachers. Kait Guru Pilot was created in 2016 and enlists local community representatives to monitor the performance of teachers who may receive special allowances based on these evaluations. It also improves student literacy and numeracy. Implications. Based on the information, if these global and local problems won't get fixed, then education for children in rural areas will just become worse. More students globally will drop out of the school, and more children being born in these areas will grow up illiterate. These areas will also stay less populated, causing more generations of children to have less teacher opportunities. Education in these areas will continue to deplete and will never provide better opportunities. My solution. Urbanizing rural areas will help to improve rural education. One of the main issues of rural areas is that it has a smaller population as opposed to urban areas which have higher populations. The minimum population of approximately 2,500 people, which negatively affects education and results in unqualified teachers or lack of teachers in general. The students don't have any experience with educators who are specified in specific teaching techniques globally and sometimes often locally. My solution would be to improve population in rural areas. One way to bring more teachers to the area is to create a program where teachers can either volunteer or be paid to dwell in a rural area, either globally or locally, to provide tips, information, or educate the children there for a given amount of time. The program will provide the teachers with a place in the urban area of that given country or city to stay and a certain amount of money. Thank you.